Hi everyone, Zach here, and welcome to lesson 100 of this RTS tutorial series. In this video, we'll be setting it up so our AI can train an engineer unit to construct buildings. This will be done in two parts. In addition, I made a unforgivable mistake in the last video, and I forgot to include an edit that I had recorded after the initial recording. I'll be including that in the start of this video. Now, I can't believe we made it to video 100 of the series. I wouldn't be here without my community, without your support, without the support of my Patreon supporters like Nemian Games and Random Number Generator. All of that said, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for making this channel possible, and thank you all for your support. Okay, now all of that said, fire up your editor and let's get started. Okay, so now that we've done that, we have one more thing to clean up. And if I hit play, I'm just going to show you that if I spawn in an engineer unit, we're going to get a slight error. Do job. And we already have the error. We're getting a read none. And this makes sense. We're getting the read none, and it's kind of hard to tell which one we're getting it on. The only reason I know we're getting this on our player is when I did the prep file. In the prep file, I had deleted the enemy and was testing out our player to make sure there were no bugs and ran across this one. So if we go into our BTS engineer find target, it's actually happening in here. So the issue is relatively simple to resolve. We're actually going to break that. We're going to have this node here, and we're going to do a branch. And this will go on to the true. We'll duplicate this down here and put that onto the false. We'll take from our unit reference, we are going to get our is controlled by AI. And if it is controlled by the AI, then we're going to go through here. If it isn't, we're just going to return an empty list. That should resolve our little bug there. All right, I'm going to hit our engineer unit. Go there. Oh, I didn't hit do job. So you can actually see the errors in here as I come up. Yep, I know about that. There's overlap. Do job. And you see there's no error. Okay. So, that takes care of what we need to do in this video. Welcome back to the editor. And in this video, we're going to spawn in our engineer unit for our enemy pawn if they have a training post. So, first thing we need to do is a little bit of cleanup. We're just going to delete the unit there. And then we're going to go to our buildings folder. We're going to go to our military buildings. And we're going to grab our training post. I'm just going to move the camera so that I can turn that. And I want to rotate this 180 degrees. And just move that along a bit. Actually, no, I'll leave it there. And I'm going to set this to controlled by AI and AI team 1. Now, before I go further, I just want to do a little bit of a sort of preamble. Now, you guys have requested that I include in the description timestamps, which I started doing in, I can't remember which section. However, the problem with timestamps and the problem with making them coherent and doing the videos is that there should be a logical progression to the timestamps. We're going to do step 1, then step 2, then step 3. It doesn't really work when I have to jump back and forth. Unfortunately, however, if you want to see the logic and how this is developed, and if you want to learn how to think in that logical pattern, then it does require going back and forth. So, that said, while there are still timestamps in the description, there is going to be a lot of back and forth. So we're going to start in an area, and we're not really going to touch it. Like, we're just going to start one small thing, go, oh, well, we can't do what we need to do here, so let's go somewhere else and adjust that thing. And that's just because that's the approach I used when I designed this. So I have in my prep file the windows in the order in which I open them, and I would jump back and forth, so it's a bit confusing sometimes to know when I need to jump back. But it's just to show you the thought process. Also, before I continue, is built, and get rid of is under construction. Alright, let's go back to our AI. Let's open up our enemy AI, and let's open up our behavior tree. So we've constructed our barracks, or sorry, our training post, and we've reduced the resources and actually constructed it here. So we need one for training our engineer. So we're going to do another sequence. And just like in the other video, we're going to tackle the end node first, and then we'll tackle the resources. So the way we're going to... Actually, I think the resources happen along the way in this. We're going to have to come back and do some cleanup in the next video instead. So I'm just going to rename this sequence as train engineer. And then it sounds like it's a train engineer instead of we're training an engineer. We're going to right click and we're going to add a decorator. It'll be a blackboard decorator. And let's click on that decorator. We're going to set it to state. We are going to set it to is equal to, and we want to see it's equal to is not normal, sorry, is needs engineer. All right. So the next thing we need to do is create a new task. So let's do a BTT task blueprint base. And let's pin that into there, go back to the window there, and rename this as BTT underscore construct enemy unit. And I'm just going to open up the AI folder and move this task into our tasks folder. All right, let's go back into our task. Let's compile and save it. And in here, well, the first thing we need is our event. Wow, I'm used to typos, but that's a new one for me. Event receive execute AI. Now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I hope that's 0, 0. We're used to that smart cast, and we've only been doing the controlled pawn. Now, in my prep file, haven't included this, but it's actually smart in this one to have the owner controller. And this is something I would have skipped and come back to later on to add in, but I'm just going to say we're going to want the controller later on. So in my original version, I did the controlled pawn, realized I need the owner as well, and then I made references elsewhere. And I'm actually going to say the next time you cast in this video, which should be in the enemy pawn, that's actually an optional cast I've included just in case you don't want to use this one here. And so you only have to cast once and then just pull that information from there. So that said, this one is either you do this one and you do it every time you need it, or you do it in the enemy pawn. Your choice. We're going to do a cast to enemy controller AI, convert to pure cast, and if this is successful, we will have our enemy controller ref, and we're just going to name this and put this into a category called references. Just going to move this for a moment. We'll do our first is valid, and we want to know, is this valid? If it isn't, we'll cast. We'll have another is valid right after, and we'll actually just plug that directly into there, and that'll be our controlled pawn. So that's our normal smart cast we've been talking about in the last couple of videos and in the last section. And this is to, ooh, sorry, that should not have been a reference made. That should be cast to enemy pawn, again, pure cast. Put a reroute in just so the thing looks pretty. There we go. And again, we will promote this one to a variable, which will be our enemy pawn reference, or ref. Plug that into the is not valid. Plug that check into there, and everything but that node can get moved. Actually, you know what? I am going to put that rerouting because it's going to drive me crazy. There we go. All right. So the next thing we need, well, is the part that I mentioned we can't do anything yet. So we need to find our training post. We need to select a training post. So we could go through the loop of finding all the training posts yet again. Just notice what I said, yet again. And I'm going to pause here again and just want to talk about something else as well. And these two ideas are going to relate, and I'll bring them together in a moment. We, in the last section, reconstructed all the tasks, all the things we had set up, except for in the support unit where we decided, you know what, we're going to use what we already have there and just plug in things that recognize the AI controller or the behavior tree. And so that's an option. We can recreate things in here. We can recreate the entire process of constructing a building or training a unit, or we can use things that are already there. So we can use the entire training post already has the logic for reducing resources, for spawning in the unit, and for all that other stuff. So with that said, we need to consider how we want to approach these things. That also said, the other thing, the thing where I was talking about, well, we can come off of here and we can search for every single training post that exists. Well, we already are searching for it elsewhere. The idea in object orientation is not to have code that repeats over and over again, but to have one function that does that code, and we call that function where we need to use it. So that said, we're going to update something from the last couple of videos. We're going to create a new function that finds training posts. And we're going to then replace our other function where we use that. So if we go back to our behavior tree, that's in our enemy status. That is right up here. We're going to get rid of all of this pretty much, minus the booleans there. We'll have to leave in the under construction, and we'll talk about the units as well later on. But we need to, we need to replicate this, so why have it twice when we can just do it once? So, that said, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our enemy pawn. So let's open up our enemy pawn, and let's just get rid of this for a minute. So in our enemy pawn, we're going to create a new function called find training posts. So find training posts. And this is a relatively easy function. All we're going to do is we are going to get our list of constructed buildings. Make sure I don't use unconstructed like last time. And we're going to do a for each loop. Now this time we don't want to break actually, and there's a couple of reasons for that, but we need a full list of every training post there is. And you might run into a bug, and I'll talk about that bug as we get to that step. There are workarounds. I might end up using that in this. I haven't decided. But we're going to first get class. We want to know what class this building belongs to. We want to know, is this class, or is class is child of? And we want to know, actually we don't want to do a child of. We want to do, is it equal to? We could do is child of. It works the same way. It's actually what I have in my prep file, but I just realized we're not actually checking the child. We're checking, is it the training post? Again, you could do is child of. If this is true, then we are going to set a local variable. So let's just plug that into there. Let's put a reroute there. Sorry about the noise outside. My neighbors are all doing construction while they're in isolation on their backyards. So we'll pull off of this and we'll promote to a local variable. That local variable will be training post local. Now, this training post local should be RTS building master. The reason why I'm saying something that should be obvious to everybody is, well, this is potentially where the bug's going to be. We might want to change that. And again, I'll talk about that in just a moment. And we're actually probably going to see the bug at some point in today's video. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get that training post local, and I'm going to do an add unique. And I'm going to just plug that into there. And this is the part where we might actually have the bug. Sorry, I like having those lined up, as you know. And I'm going to pull off of here. I'm going to promote to variable. And this variable will be list of training posts. Now, I need to get specific information from the training posts that are not available in any of the parents. So I can't use RTS building master. Instead, I need to use our training post. Now, we'll let that go through. It's not going to find any errors because we only use it once. This might result in an error. And you can keep, deleting this reference, deleting this variable and remaking it. The alternative to that problem is you pull off of here and you cast, and then you set that to, you cast to RTS building master. It will only work if this is true anyway, so we can actually replace that as a pure cast and use the success on here. That is one option. You could also use an interface to get the same reference to the training post. But what you, as I said, you could do is do cast to training post, convert this to a pure cast, and plug that into there, and then plug that into there. Oh, I'm actually going to undo what I just did. And I'm going to leave this node in here just in case I decide to go that route at the end of the video so I can save some time. But this is what we need. We need a list of training posts. So before we return to today's sort of stuff, let's go back to our status check. And let's just clean this up a bit. So, we no longer need most of this. In fact, everything between this true and the execute pin can go away now. Sorry, this branch, not this true. So we're going to take all of this and we're just going to delete it for now. We're going to come back to the start here, and off this first reroute, we're going to do find training posts. Now we have a list of training posts. We have a potential list. We'll come off of here and we'll get our list of training posts. We want to know, does this list actually have anything in it? Now there are two ways we can do this. We can do length and do is length greater than 0 or equal to and greater than 1. Or we can do last index. I always prefer doing last index, and from the last index we can search. For some reason in Blueprint I prefer doing it. In C++ I always do length. Is the last index equal to or greater than 0? If it is, did I actually leave that branch in? There it is. We have a training post. If it is not, we don't have a training post. So that reduces a fair amount of code here. Or at least it reduces the code being replicated. It's actually the same amount of code. We're doing all the same steps. We're just doing it elsewhere now. Alright, so now we have to plug these into the right spot. So where do these go? Well, in fact, actually what we can do is we can make that a little bit neater by moving everything in closer. There we go. And then we'll just move all of this stuff a little bit further out. Just a tiny bit. Alright. Sorry, it was going to bother me. We're going to come off of the true here and plug that into there. Just put a reroute here and plug the false into there. That's all. So we're going to check. Do we have a training post? Yes, no. Are any being constructed? I mean, if we have a training post already, we don't really care if any are being constructed, but we actually might say at some point that we want to have more than one training post. So we want to check how many do we have. We'll have to add something else in to do that. But, you know, make sure that if we have one, there isn't already another one under construction. So that's why I'm leaving that there for now. That might be updated later on. Alright, so that takes care of what we need to do here. So we've just updated what we currently have. Let's go back to our construct enemy Sorry, give me 1 second. I just noticed the name didn't change. Interesting. BTT construct enemy unit. There we go. Alright, sorry about that. So in our construct enemy unit, the next thing we want to do is we want to, well, get our training posts. But we don't want to actually just get them. We want to select a training post we're going to train a unit at. So we're going to create a new function. So let's go there, and this will be called select training post. This will be a bit of a polymorphic function. So first thing we're going to do, as we're going to put this into our references folder, is we're going to get that enemy pawn reference. We are going to find training posts. We are going to then, just so we have the updated list, we are going to get that list. So list of training posts. There we go. And we want to get, again, the last index. And again, we want to know, is this last index equal to or greater than 0? Meaning there is something, in fact, in our list. So if it is, then we'll continue on. If it isn't, well, we'll have to come back to the isn't in a moment, because we're going to have some variables we'll let us nullify or set to null here and pass out. But we'll get to that in just a moment. I'm going to be a bit... Oh, I was going to be lazy and just copy that, but I just realized that reroute's there. So I'm going to get my enemy pawn again, and I'm going to get my list of training posts. Alright, so what I'm going to do with this one is I want to get the actual length this time. I want to know how many we have. And I want to know in particular, Do we only have one? Because if we do, then we don't need to worry about, well, selecting one. We only have one to pick, so that's the one we're going to use. So we're going to get the length of it. All right, so we want to know, is this equal to 1? There we go. If it is equal to 1, again, we only have one training post, so we don't need to worry about selecting. We literally just have no choice. That's the one we're going to use. So if that happens, now I'm going to copy these, or Control W these. We will get a copy. We will promote this to a local variable, and this will be training post local. And this is the one we're going to send our request to train a unit to. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to pull off of here, and we're going to do a return node. Not return resource. Wow. Because that is part of the training post. So add return node. That was a mistake I made in videos ages ago. You want to get the training post local, and we're going to pass it out. And let's just rename this. We don't need the local. We just need to pass out training post. There we go. So let's go back to our original branch. If this is false, if we don't have a training post, then what we're going to do is we're going to set our training post local to be nothing. It already should be when the instance of this gets called, but just to be on the safe side. And we're going to do a return. Again, the wrong return. We'll do add return node. And I could just plug that into there, but again, I'm going to leave this blank so it's not so I know it's not valid. It is just an extra step. We're returning nothing. This is a void return. Alright, so off this branch here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a for each loop. And we're going to do a for each loop of our training posts. So we're going to just copy that. And we'll do for each. We don't want to break this time like we did earlier, or like we did in the last couple of videos. And what we're going to do is we are going to get from here, and this is why in our enemy pawn, this had to be our training posts. As I said, we need particular information. We want to get unit to be trained. In fact, actually, I want to pop open my training post. I want to fix that typo real quick. So if you didn't notice the typo, it should be units to be trained. I'm also in the wrong part of my lists. So it's military, training posts, and now we might actually get that error I was talking about a moment ago. Units to be trained. Let's see if we get that error. Let's compile again. Oh, okay, so we didn't get the error. You might get an error when you do that, saying that these two aren't compatible. Again, you can either use the cast, delete this variable, and remake it. The option is yours on how you want to tackle that. We're going to need the training post open next anyway. That's the next thing we have to deal with. So we want to know how many units are going to be trained, and then we're going to just add unique. What we're going to do is we're going to create a list of units that are being trained, so a list of queues at each training post. So we're going to promote to a local variable, and this will be our training queue. If I can spell Q right, there we go. Also, help us spell training right. Training queue lengths. So there's more than one local. And the way we know there's more than one, potentially at least more than one, is we have more than one training post in this particular situation. And the final thing we're going to do is actually we're going to not duplicate anything. We're just going to move that. And we are going to take our training queue and duplicate it down here, or a list of training queues. We're going to get min of int array, just like we've done with the floats for getting distances. Just like we've done with the floats for getting distances, we're going to do the same with a integer. And we want to get the index. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull off of here and we're going to get a copy at that index. So whichever one has the smallest training queue. Now, if all the posts have an equal amount, it will pick just the first one off this list, because it's the first one that has the minimum. And then we will set our training post local. So we'll come off the complete. We'll set our training post local. And then to be lazy, I'm just going to Control W that down here. And we're going to pass that information out. So now we have selected our training post. In fact, you could just plug from there directly into there as well, but I like setting the local. All right, so now that we've selected our training post, have the function for selecting our training post, let's call it up. Let's plug it into there, put a reroute in, and then select everything, including all those reroutes. We are going to collapse down to macro, and this will be our reference casts, plural. And I will worry about which one the object is in just a moment. I think the object is going to be, yeah, the object is definitely our controller, AI. And this is our enemy pawn. And then this is them, just so it reads a bit nicer. Alright, let's pop that open just to make sure everything is correct. Alright, we still have our is valid. There's no extra things coming from here. Let's go back to our event graph. Everything still looks good in there. Let's close these two things just for now. And the next thing we need to do is we need to check, is this valid? This is going to be like a branch. Is valid with the question mark. If it is valid, well, then we're going to continue on. If it isn't, we're going to fail out of what we're doing. So we're going to finish, execute, and we're going to say it's not successful because, well, we don't have a training post. We can't do anything. If it is valid, we're going to take from here, and I'm not going to reroute this. I'm just going to do a promote to variable. This will be our selected training post. Sorry, the microphone is directly over the variable list, so if there are typos, I really do apologize. Alright, so we're going to skip the last thing we're going to do, because that's part of the logic in here. But just be aware, we're going to run into a bug. Just like we did with the buildings, we're going to have a bug where it's going to keep constructing. And the solution to that's going to be placed partially here and elsewhere. But the next thing we need to do is we actually need to queue up our training. So if you don't remember how we've done this previously, well, we did this in our widget for our building. We're going to kind of replicate what we have there. So the first thing we need actually, and let's just make this a, this is a reference to a building. And I just moved that in the wrong spot. Sorry, let me fix that typo. This is a reference to a building, so we're just going to put this into our references folder. The next thing we need is our state. And this is a Blackboard key. This will be something we can edit, and this will be in our Blackboard keys. We need our state's enum, and this will go into an enums folder. We'll have one more variable, but we'll take care of that in a moment when we're dealing with that problem that I mentioned. We're going to have multiple things spawn in. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get our state. And we want to get this value as an enum. And then we want to do a switch on enemy state enum. Now I have found for some reason that sometimes I'm able to get this without having this enum in our variable list, and sometimes I'm not. I'm not sure why that is in Blueprints. You know, it should be global, but for some reason it doesn't act that way all the time. So I just like having it there as a backup. And if you can't find it, so when I was doing this prep file, for some reason I couldn't find this despite having this in here. I actually had to pull it in and then pull off and do the switch, and I could delete this and use these. Alright, so that done, let's move that over there just so we have that a bit nicer looking. And we're doing the needs engineer. Well, let's get our selected training post reference. If you don't know why we're starting there, again, refer to our widget. We need to set an enum. We need to set our unit target, or a unit type, sorry, not target. So we want to set our unit type. And we're not building an infantry unit. Well, what we're building is our engineer unit. And then, well, I'm just going to put a couple of reroutes to make this look prettier. We want to trigger our recruitment. So let's just type in recruitment trigger. Again, if you don't remember, this is in our training post and in our building master, but it's only, the event is in our building master, but it's only active in our training posts. So it's actually the training post that's going to be firing that because it's the child of the building master. Alright, so now we can actually spawn a unit in. There's going to be a couple of bugs. Let's take a look at a couple of those bugs real. Alright, so now we've done that, we can test this. Well, first we actually have to add that into here. So let's add that in of construct. Wow, I forgot to hit the construct enemy unit. And this will be training engineer. And make sure that says state. Save it, hit play. Notice the resources. Notice that the player resources just reduced. But hey, there's an engineer. Except for some reason, it has no correct information. Interesting. Well, that's one of the bugs. We have the bug of the resources. And actually, let me hit play one more time. I want to show you the third bug we need to consider. So there's a unit not correctly spawning in. Our resources reduced. And the third bug, if we go in here, it's still trying to train a unit. So it doesn't realize that a unit's been added in. So we have 3 bugs we need to address. And that is what we will be doing in the next video. So, that said, this series has been brought to you by my Patreon sponsors, like Tristan, Ludovic, and David. If you've enjoyed this series or this video, go ahead and hit that like button down below. It really does help this channel out. And if you want to help the channel further, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. If you want to be here when we clean up our spawning in of our enemy units, make sure to hit that subscribe and notify icon. And as always, I look forward to seeing you in the next tutorial, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.